Welcome to the lecture series on object oriented analysis and design. In the past few lectures, we have seen why the complexity is not so critical as a challenge, but then using the techniques, the notations, the strategies, the tools, the paradigms of software engineering to address a complexity that is really challenging is the crux of the exercise. Towards this extent, we have taken recourse to understanding that it is better to use some computer aided software engineering tools very specific to object oriented analysis and design. We have unified modeling language as what we have really done, and to facilitate easier use of unified modeling language in the exercise of dealing with a very high grade of complexity, we have come up with some case tools exclusively working on UML. Today, whether we like it or not, OOAD is very much synonymous with UML, and UML is very much synonymous with a tool called Rational Rose, a company called Rational which developed Rational Rose. Simply by using the tool, we haven't solved all problems, but then we have got a better grip on saying that we can certainly do this. We have a better way of looking at it, change the process, agile, continue. A tool is a tool, it tells everything. It is a great unifier, it is a great modeling technique. However, the modeling tools also need to become a bit more sophisticated. Whatever we do in whichever process, we are not likely to do any more than this blue band sketch to think and communicate, and that is happening only in agile. Agile started as some exercise which is 9 AM to 5 PM, not more than that. Whatever you can do in that many hours you are doing, let us say 8 hours working day, and next day is a different day. That is how it started. Today we are talking about user stories, we are talking about epics, more user stories, but essentially agile begins with a stand-in meeting at 9 o'clock in the morning, everything closes by 5 o'clock. It has aggressively built some good ideas called refactoring. Most of the times in software engineering, we like to build, we do not like to delete the code. Today, if you have done 10 lines, progress simply means another 10 lines, even if it is one line, it is progress, but 9 lines we are not likely to accept. That is the idea. 10 can become 11 tomorrow, but if 10 becomes 9, there is a concern. So, we have not been expecting or allowing what is called refactoring of the code. Like that, every different process, every different software development methodology has its own differences, its own distinctions, its own charms. So, iterative development process, ad hoc. So, what we have eventually done is agile and ad hoc more or less believe in sketching. So, in the ad hoc methods, we have built what are called fantastic data flow diagrams, DFD diagrams. We have created what are called IDEF for designs, expressing designs. Roughly the ad hoc and agile both are running neck to neck on the quantity of sketching and thinking. However, 9 diagrams in UML is a big ask. Even though there are only 9 diagrams and 11 things, the combinations in the way we are addressing the complexity are so many that it becomes a big challenge in itself. So, having a tool to tell us that this is where you drew the diagram, this is where you left it incomplete, this needs to be filled, this diagram is relating to the other diagram, if you change it here, you have to change it there. So, some kind of a background help that keeps things connected, keeps people connected, keeps people working together on what is called number of things which they have to challenge themselves with. That is the complexity, that is the level of abstraction. So, we scale. A tool always helps. Computer is a tool, like that this is also a tool. This will take away the chores, the mundane things that are necessary in what we call beyond a point it becomes a drudgery, 9 diagrams, 11 things, same thing you get accustomed. If you do 2 projects, the third project everything is automatic, and when we begin to become complacent, we make more errors and get into a rut more fast, much more faster way. So, what we have done is a very simple idea of talking about sketching. So, what are we doing on this sketching? Most of the time we are doing whiteboard sketching. Whatever we do, we are only building some simple diagrams, simple ways of expressing, whichever way we are talking about. Initial agile requirements modeling, initial agile architecture modeling, paper modeling, this is what we called prototyping, paper prototype. We built some prototyping, but this did not take off, rapid prototyping, because prototype will be eventually thrown away. We do not have the luxury to build a prototype to throw it away today. Stiff margins, stiff timelines, everything is like that. So, case tool modeling is now becoming more or less a central piece of attention, because it allows people to share, and then about 32% are finding it useful. Paper modeling outdated. Agile very specific to the process of agile, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Tomorrow is a different day. We take up only what can be done in 8 working hours. We cannot take up what will happen next day. So, this is how we have been talking about all along. They are very specific, but it shows a very good success rate of very simple sketching. The idea is not very complex there, it is just sketching. Agile uses only sketching to think and communicate. So, we have had tools, play Scrum, many things are there to get organized. Now, it is a full blown area, a lot of people are working. I have some very good colleagues who talk about agile very passionately, and now that definition has changed. We are now not talking more about projects, we are always talking about products. Every day they will churn out one product. If you find it useful, you find it useful, otherwise it is not useful. So, this is a good reasonable usage of all the things that the case tool will tell us. UML definitely is scoring very high, it is getting a much better acceptability. Rational rows is almost synonymous with UML today. OAD has become synonymous with UML, rational rows has become synonymous with UML. Most of the books, most people talk only about UML. We may find better methods, but better methods have to come. Models in the unified process. So, we have been talking about key UML elements: business model, requirement model, analysis model, design model, implementation model, testing model. So, you see how many models, it is not one model. Therefore, that idea of a unified process is absolutely essential. It is at one point in time when we were talking about software engineering, we were talking about requirements phase, specification phase, design phase, programming phase, testing phase, implementation phase, maintenance phase, retirement phase. This was sanctum sanct. Life cycle was telling us how to make all these phases combined together in a manner where we do not spend more time reinventing the wheel and then failing. We would rather tell that these are some copybook ideas of mixing and matching these phases, but you should understand the phase. Every phase has a different notation, every phase has a different team, every phase has a different language to use. How do we bring them together? That was the question we asked in life cycle. The idea of life cycle model has given us some standard ways of defining the phases, combining the phases. The practitioner's approach, which came between 85 to 90 very dominantly because of Pressman and the work, will allow us to go back and forth, which is also essential, because we have seen in one of the challenges, it is necessary to go from requirements to design, also necessary to go from design to requirements. The reverse is also true. Two-way traceability is essential, otherwise we can't manage change management becomes very difficult. So, we have had so many models, there is a business model, requirements model. By far OAD promises that it can unify all these things just using 9 diagrams, 11 things, all this is possible. Every model had its own key UML elements, key concerns. There are so many other problems, there are advantages, there are disadvantages, but that is how it is. So, test from test cases, this is how we started in the UML elements. So, we have been saying that test driven development is also possible here, it is not something alien. Model based development, definitely it is possible. Test driven, component based development, talked about user centered, later on we will talk about use case driven. So, what is the driver for the entire development process is now not such a serious decision which we have to take immediately. As we progress, the tool will make it visible what we should address first. They are not totally excluding of one another. We can use all these things. the best unification is seen in this modeling language. So, having said this, we talked about business processes, use cases. So, we said use case is scoring very heavily, use case driven development is scoring very heavily, because it is something very native to object oriented analysis and design, and it is directly impacting the business process. That is where the heat is felt. Businesses are changing, multiple stakeholders, different domains, multiple domains, key term players, business analysts, project managers, architects, client. So, what we need to understand very carefully is that the unification we are talking about is not merely limited to so many diagrams getting unified, or simply talking about life cycle process or development process getting unified with organizational process, which is getting unified with supporting process, but it is more than that. It is something which we are talking about as different models can happen, they might have evolved separately, they may be very clear saying there is a black box, still it is fine. We do not tell our business model, it is something which is sanctum sanct. It can be a Coca-Cola formula which we do not even want to know, but business can happen around it. So, what we need to understand is the fact that multiple models can be handled without talking in that many terms. All of us talk the same language, that is the language of unified modeling language. 9 diagrams, we talk about 11 things. All this gets unified, it becomes very sublime and it provides you traceability. It is a language enough to tell that this is the reason why we did this. This should be going to the business model, this should be going to the requirements model, this should be going to the analysis model. So, what we have done is looked at all these ideas, sequence diagram, every diagram, 9 diagrams are there. We said that if we use unified modeling language, we can do all these ideas. It is not that only one case tool has happened. Right from 1996 to 2015, there are so many case tools other than rational rows. I have deliberately avoided rational rows here. Other than rational rows, over the last 20 years or so, 2 decades, they have been nearly a 10, top 10, top 12 kind of a thing, which I have picked top 12, a dozen case tools which have been used and which they are using all along, and a simple table using what is called a criteria for evaluating compliance with UML. All these case tools called Lolita, Record, the DH tool, LIDA, the CM Builder, the UMLG, DC Builder, Rapid, ABCD, all these tools are UML compliant. UML became a de facto standard. If you are talking about case tool, the first question that everybody asks is how does it compare with UML and the case tool. So, these case tools are very nicely UML compliant, support of the development environment, support of multiple users for teamwork, information generation, support of reusability, patterns, integration with other products, user friendliness of the tool. Now, the point here is that no organization has purchased all the products simultaneously. Over a span of 2 to 3 decades, several software pieces have emerged in the organization. Integrating them is a very big challenge, and OOAD has been promising that it will package everything, link them together, hopefully it will work. We can put them together, we promise that. There are other architectures, service oriented architectures, either in terms of web services or cloud computing. These are all possibilities. Even though OOAD is very promising, what took maximum attention and always promising much more is the cloud related technologies. We think that if all pieces of software are there, the simplest way to put them together using service oriented architectures is perhaps a cloud. We talked about so many things, it has its own pluses. No technology is going to kill another technology, it is a technology option which has done well, and it comes from what my work has been for some years, distributed operating systems. So, we talked about platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, software as a service. So, we can hopefully put all these things together in a manner where it appears integrated enough. We are not amalgamating, we are not doing it, it appears integrated enough. User friendliness of the tool, costs of licensing and deployment, So, this is how we have been talking about IDE compatibility. All the things that I have spoken about are definitely possible using these tools to some extent. There are good companies that have invested in these tools. Please remember 1996 to 2015, and UML happened between 2002 to what is called 2020, let us say 18 years. Even today UML is current. We want people who know UML. Many extensions have been possible. Multinationals who have been always developing great pieces of software have built their own extensions, customized extensions, customized objectories. Everything is well known. It is the most transparent, most popular, almost synonymous with OOAD. Today, if you want to talk about a case tool without comparing it to UML, we are not likely to sell it out. We are not likely to get the acceptability, desirable acceptability. Aristo Visual Case, DBmain, iGraphics, these are more recent. Those are the traditional archaic ones. Comparable, iGraphics, MetaEdit, Microsoft Visio, OmniGraphy, Rational Rose, SmartDraw, Argo UML, Visible Analyst. So, Visible Analyst is an integrated strategic planning, data modeling, business process modeling, UML modeling, structured analysis and design modeling developed by Visible. Visible is the company, and what they said is very clear: we are only at the analysis phase. It is an analyst. So, at the highest level of abstraction, Visual Analyst is going to help you do all these things. So, this many models you can analyze: business model, requirements model, analysis model, design model, implementation model and testing model. Everything works. All these models are possible in a Visual Analyst. We have had some other tools when we were talking about analysis and design. This was early 90s. The Turbo, outside of compilers, they started building analysis tools. Turbo compilers were a runaway success, but Turbo Analyst, other things have severe limitations. We know what happens when it is pitching at a high level, because most of the times we run into the problem in bringing from the abstraction to the detailing. Already we are in the abstraction, too many design models, again one more abstraction, we were not able to ground things properly. It is a fact of life that it is lot more easier to make a person do 10 things and then conclude on what they will do 2 levels up in abstraction, but that is not necessarily true when we see somebody working in abstraction, will they ground correctly. So, we need 2 ways in software engineering: Argo UML, SmartDraw, Rational Rose, OmniGraphy is a diagrammatic application for Mac OS, very specifically for Mac OS platform. Microsoft Visio, MetaEdit, iGraphics Flowcharter. This is a very interesting idea. Flowchart almost vanished. We were in BE mid 80s when flowchart was very popular. All of a sudden, iGraphics made Flowcharter very, very attractive. Flowcharting tool for any more than 200 lines is a mess. We do not know where to start, where to end, but it is a great idea, simple ideas, simple symbols, and then we can draw many flowcharts. It is a great idea because hardly 10 symbols are there, any program you can represent. Very, very attractive, it is very intellectually stimulating, it is just the permutations and combinations, any program you can work on it. So, flowcharting almost vanished. By the time 90s happened, flowcharting was no more spoken of. Neither was the pseudocode. Simple disciplines of understanding computing virtually vanished. iGraphics brought it alive, and it is a very nice tool to work with. Flowcharting became very attractive. We strongly believe even today that flowcharting should be adequate, because that is how we started. If only you have a better tool. Why do we want to go through 9 diagrams? Why do we want to go through 11 things? If we have a good flowcharter, there are good number of reasons why flowcharting is still useful. It is not a competitor, but it is nice to know that it works. Rational Rose is rational object oriented software engineering. Rose is not the flower rose. Rational object oriented software engineering rose. It was more or less a pun on object oriented software engineering is what we used to normally think, which made use cases and Ivar Jacobson happen. The rationals variety of this was called Rose. Rational rows is a set of visual modeling tools for development of object oriented software. ROS uses the UML to provide graphical methods for non-programmers wanting to model business processes as well as programmers modeling application logic. So, it is something which we are talking about as a confluence of people who are skilled in programming and those who do not know anything about programming. So, we now build everything on that nice idea called computing. Computing first, programming next. So, what do you want to do with a computer? Computing. However, it roughly translates to program, software, etc., etc. That is how we take up further. That is the job of software engineers, software developers. All these lectures are making you oriented towards getting something into a kind of a programmable form and then programming, developing software. Facilitates use of unified modeling language, component object modeling. COM, DCOM were doing very well for some time. After that it did not happen. Then we had CORBA again from OMG. How to put two objects together? We said we will have packages, we will have code bases. How do you put them together? So, the idea of component based development took wings with COM, distributed COM. The COM and DCOM were doing very well for some time. After that the dynamics of the market simply did not make it happen, and as a result we moved over to CORBA. Right now we are thinking that common object request broker architecture. There are certain requests which will be given to an ORB, object request broker. The object request broker will find out which is the place where that request can be serviced, put it back. So, this is almost the forerunner for what is called service oriented architecture. The request is there, the ORB, object request broker, there are many ORBs, you can build many ORB. That was another topic which we will discuss later in the subsequent lectures, how to make that object request broker. Two things, patterns and ORBs are what we think will be fitting together in this lecture series, and what we need to understand therefore is the COM and DCOM were very good, but service oriented architectures in form of cloud have taken precedence over all these things. Object modeling technique, Booch 93, these are good ideas. Rational rows can facilitate, but then it didn't really take off as well as cloud computing, neither did web services. We were having plenty of the three competing ideas of putting together what we are talking about, and of which cloud is now presently the leader, technology leader. Refinement of early models, system and software design. Introduced in the middle of the project, rational rows includes tools for reverse engineering as well as forward engineering. You can gain valuable insights to your actual constructed architecture and pinpoint deviations from the original design. ROS offers a fast way for clients and new employees to become familiar with system internals. This is a simple screen capture. It has a browser window, it has a set of drawing tools, it has a drawing window, a documentation window. It provides 4 views, the use case view, the logical view, component view and development view. The tool will allow you to do all these things. The interface is very simple, the drawing area is very simple, the symbols, the tools, the buttons, everything, the menus, everything is exactly geared to help you draw UML diagrams, unified modeling diagrams, represent those 11 things, draw 9 diagrams, tell how they are interconnected. All these things the tool will help. By using all the 4 views, you can find out whether you are linking correctly or not. Object identification and modeling across variety of models which you will have to do. That is what is the unification that it promises. So, you click some buttons, you will talk about a use case view, logical view, component view. This is just a tool based, again a screen capture with certain diagrams. So, the same diagram which we are talking about, login diagram, register for courses as use case diagram will appear like this. That is how it appears. The views are here, the diagrams are here. Now, please understand that this view is connected to this view, they are not completely disjointed views. Something that you want to change here will be changeable here. I may be familiar with use case because that is what I am going to talk. Use case driven development, I will start looking at this. Somebody else may be familiar with this. People are comfortable with component view, all are interrelated. We think that 4 views are enough to give us a very good idea about what we are doing. Are we on the right track? Is it still traceable? Can we still make it happen? So, 4 different views are enough, we can't proliferate many views also. So, we started talking about stakeholders, we link which stakeholder is good on this. A set of stakeholders are very good on use cases, a set of stakeholders are very good on logical views. The diagrams, everything is becoming very obvious, the tool will facilitate linking all the, it is not doing anything on its own. It has a good interface, it tracks who is logging in, who is logging out. So, it is a nice idea which we talk about, and as we said, the notion of cloud as service provider has become very attractive. Today, I can access to worldwide computing facilities from my office, from my box, I do not need to buy them. Well, it is all the same case, again I am talking about from an open systems standpoint, we contribute, we do something, but then the fact remains that all these views are assimilatable, globally assimilatable, we need not even know who the person are, we simply tag people to the various exercises and it will happen automatically. That is what we have been doing, the wonderful tools which are there, and in all these cases rational rows is the same, but we need one more thing called object request broker, common object request broker architecture. So, we made some requests, it builds. It did not take on the requests and services, but it definitely delivered on object identification modeling, the more serious ways in which we have been talking about complexity. It is not merely specified services and service level agreements, but the design, the complexity, the life cycle, the very software development, that is what we are able to tackle. And as we see, as we progress, in summary, rational rows has been exceedingly good on the development life cycle. Last 18 years it has been good. OOAD is now synonymous with UML and UML is synonymous with rational rows and vice versa. Simple interface, talks about all diagrams, 11 things, everything is custom made to take you into UML and make everything manageable. Just 4 views are possible to be are enough, and they are possible in rational rows, and only 4 views are possible, you can manage any degree of complexity. So, with this we talk about a very simple interface and a very good way of working with diagrams. Everything in unified modeling language is mappable, it is rational, object oriented software engineering. That OO became only O. Rational is a company and it has given us this particular, they claim that only 4 views are enough. There is no need to proliferate more views. So, multiple stakeholders will find out which view is comfortable, they are all interlinked views. It is a simple way of drawing a line and it is a good success story. As I said, there are other tools, a dozen tools are there that are comparable. Modern tools are there, including a flowcharter that has become comparable. So, this particular lecture is specific to a tool on the user interfaces, otherwise it is an overview of a dozen tools which should do this. The pictures, the diagrams, the screenshots are all belonging to rational rows, which is there in many laboratories. Thank you, we will meet in the next lecture.